One of the most important decisions you will need to make in your real estate investing journey is choosing where you want to invest. The famous location. And depending on who you are and your level of comfort, there are some investors who will prefer to invest nearby where they live. That way they can drive by whenever they can and just check on the property from time to time personally, right? And there are other investors out there who are more comfortable investing long distance, meaning they don't mind going to other states or perhaps even hours away within the state that they live in to invest in real estate. I happen to be the investor that is in the last bucket, meaning the type of investor who's comfortable investing long distance because I wanted to maximize the money that I have. If you're new here, welcome to Nova Rise. I created this channel to share my real estate investing journey with you in hopes that I could provide valuable information to help you in your investing journey, not just in real estate, but also in other assets. Aside from real estate, I also invest in the stock market, I invest in precious metals and businesses. Now, you might be wondering, what do I mean by maximizing my money investing out of state? Well, I happen to live in New York City, and properties here are quite expensive. That means that whatever revenue I generate from the rental income will not be enough to cover the mortgage and any operating expenses related to it. And aside from the expenses, there's another thing that you really have to consider. And it's the fact that some states are landlord friendly and some states are tenant friendly. In my case, if I would have chosen to invest in New York, I would have had to deal with a tenant friendly state, meaning that the rules in terms of housing regulation would have definitely benefit more the tenant and not me as a real estate investor. And because of that, I realized that New York was definitely not one of those states where I wanted to park my money and make it grow. And instead, I chose to invest in another state that met at least two of these criteria. Those states need to generate enough cash flow to make that money that I invested work for me. And two, it needs to be landlord friendly. So I went on a quest and I did some research and I actually found out 3 states that not only provided the 2 items that were important to me, but also a lot of other perks that you definitely need to consider. And those states are Florida, and I happen to invest in Florida, Tennessee, and Texas. Now, what makes the states very desirable is the fact that they cover 2 of the points that I mentioned earlier, plus 2 more. So in total, there are 4 components that you always have to keep in mind every time you go out there and try to find the ideal location for you to invest in real estate. Now, out of the 4 in the list, the most important one that you need to consider is population growth. You want to invest in areas where there's an influx of population. Otherwise, you'll be dealing with a lot of vacant properties because there's not enough people to fill it in. People are actually leaving. You don't want that. You want the opposite. You want traffic from people moving into that area. Why is that important? Very simple. When people move, they leave their old homes behind, and when they go into a new state, they need a new home. And that's where you come in to provide housing to meet that demand, to meet that necessity for housing. Now, one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that the influx of population, that migration is actually permanent. You don't want to deal with something that is just trendy where people move in and out of the area for like a year or 2. You want to make sure that that's permanent because there's a big investment that you're making with your money. You're investing in a piece of real estate, and ideally you will want to make it work for you long term, ideally at least 5 years. At least in my experience, that's how long I try to make my properties work for me. But how do you really know that that influx of population is in fact permanent? Very easy. And that leads me to my next point, infrastructure. Have you ever gone to an area and you've seen a lot of construction, not just in businesses, but also on the local roads? And then when you ask around, hey, what's happening around here? You hear the locals saying, well, we have Home Depot building a new location here, or Target is coming into town and building a new location here. Or, oh, there's a stadium that's about to be built and the city decided to build additional roads to help with the influx of traffic. You see, when you see things like that, you will learn that those companies are big. They invest big money. But that's not what I want you to focus on. The reason why this company invests big money, it's because they have done their market research. They have studied the area for years to come. And ultimately, with the data that they gather, they learn that that area is worthy of investment. And once they use that research to confirm their findings, that's when they go in and they invest the money. Those big brands, they don't invest the money just because. They want to make sure that their money, it's going to eventually work for them. And you as a real estate investor, you can leverage that research that they have done on their behalf. You can actually use that information to determine, hey, well, if Target is coming into town or Home Depot is coming into town, or if there's a new stadium coming into town, that means there are going to be a lot of job creations. And that means people are going to be coming in and they're going to require housing. The demand is there, the demand has been created. There's an opportunity for growth for that particular area. And that's when you can come in and invest your capital and make that money work for you. If you're enjoying this episode so far, make sure you share that with someone who will find that valuable. And also don't forget to subscribe. Now, the next point, and that actually ties back into what I consider to be important, housing prices. You see, housing prices affect your cash flow directly. If you purchase a house that is too expensive and the rent revenue doesn't make enough to cover the purchase of that home, you are already on a negative cash flow. And just to make sure you know what I mean by cash flow, the calculation as cash flow is simply the rental revenue minus the operating expenses minus the finance expensive, that means the mortgage. And then the result of that, it's what you get in cash flow. The higher the cash flow, the better. The states that I mentioned earlier, Florida, Tennessee, and Texas, they happen to have pretty good home prices compared to the rest of the nation. In fact, in 2023, the nation median home price in the U.S. was $395,000. And these three states offer home prices close to the national average. Just to give you some context, the average home price in 2023 in Texas was $389,000. In Florida, it was $410,000. And in Tennessee, it was $402,000. Now, depending on the timeline, you might wonder, why am I using 2023 numbers? Well, remember that research takes time. So for the most part, the most accurate numbers that we're going to find are usually the ones that belong to the prior year, because researchers need to take a full-blown 12-month time period in order to give us that information. You could use the last couple of months data, but you won't get a full-blown picture, which is why I decided to stick to 2023 numbers. Now, why is this so important? Why am I focusing so much on pricing? Well, the topic of affordability, it's very important. If you happen to be an investor who's building homes for home buyers, you want to make sure that the population that you're serving can actually afford the type of housing that you have available to offer. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting with a home in the market and no families to be able to afford it. So pricing has to be right. And the same thing goes for those who are shopping for homes. You want to make sure that you're buying a home that you can actually afford comfortably. You don't want to buy the most expensive house in the neighborhood. Yes, it's beautiful, but then you're feeling that you're actually choking in debt and that you cannot afford to do anything else. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be house poor. And the same applies to the other side of the equation. If you're investing in real estate to become an investor and provide rental housing, the cost of that property will also impact your cash flow. Because let's face it, the higher the cost of the property, the higher the down payment needs, and also the higher the amount of money that you will need to borrow from the bank. So that means that your monthly payments in your mortgage are going to be higher. And sometimes the rental revenue versus the mortgage payment, they don't necessarily align with each other. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation in where your mortgage payment is a lot higher than what you can generate with your rental income. After all, the purpose of investing is to make money work for you. You don't want to find yourself in a situation in where you're actually working to maintain that investment. If that's the case, then it is not an investment. It's just simply bad debt. The debt that it's going to require you to keep working in order to maintain it. The next point is cost of living and taxes. And believe it or not, this one is directly tied with population growth because people tend to migrate to where they can make the most with their money. If you happen to live in a state where it's too expensive to afford, chances are you're going to be miserable. So people are going to look for alternative and where their money can offer them the lifestyle that they're looking for. Hopefully a lifestyle where they can enjoy a better quality of life. And what are the odds? Florida, Tennessee, and Texas happen to be states where there's no state income tax. And that's a huge saving. Less money paid in taxes equals more money back into your pocket. So to sum up, the best states to invest in real estate need to meet 4 components: population growth, growing infrastructure, affordable home prices, and low cost of living and low taxes. And it turns out that these 3 states that you see on the screen happen to meet that criteria. This episode was created in response to a request to this video right here that you see on the screen, and I hope you enjoy it as well. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.